going bold about EMS. And so, you know, up to that point, and a lot of our work has been on house cleaning, right sizing the ship, so to speak, you know, walking before we run on a number of the proposals that are out there. But shortly after that Widener Forum, the County Commissioners Association put together a working group subcommittee on EMS issues from the take a look at the Sr6 Commission Report. I was privileged to be invited to one of the intro meetings, and I was very impressed with the county commissioners that were in that room for that initial meeting, and the background that they had in terms of emergency response, fire, EMS, and the commitment in that room. And so as you saw in the my initial emails, the County Commissioners Association put forth a report on county-wide authorities, and then right after that, Senators Carney and Killian put forth a proposal and that I shared with you as well. Senator Baker has also been interested in this issue. That's why Chris Ramsey from Senator Baker's office is involved here as well. So I'm very pleased, you know, with the county commissioners having put forth their proposal, and then the subsequent Carney-Killian proposal being out there. We were going to do this hearing in April. Unfortunately, COVID got that as well. So, you know, as things started to settle down, we wanted to get back in the loop here on this issue. Overall, like I said in my prior email, I would like to hear, you know, whether this concept is worthy of pursuing from each of your ends. Is it practical? You know, where are the pitfalls, you know, and technical issues that should be addressed here as we start off on this. We're going to go ahead and recognize each of the organizations and entities on the participant list. We'll go straight down, let everybody have an intro statement, and then we'll go into the roundtable discussion. We'll go into 11:30 at the latest, and I believe just about everybody's muted here, but if you haven't already, please mute yourself. And, you know, we'll start off here then with the committee director here for Senator Iovino, Minority Chair of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee, Noah Irwin. So Noah, go ahead.
Hey everyone, thanks Nate. I'll be brief. Thanks Nate for putting this together. Looking forward to the conversation today. Really appreciate Senator Carney and Senator Killian's leadership on this issue. You know, something that in Allegheny County we have, where my senator's district is, you know, I think there's about 140 fire departments and I think just as many EMS folks. So this is, you know, an issue that's relevant there as well, you know, everywhere across the state. Yeah, looking forward to participating today. Thanks for coming together. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, Noah. Now I'd like to turn it over here to Senator Carney's office. We have on the line both Sarah McCullough, the Chief of Staff here for Senator Carney, as well as Sam Arnold, the Legislative Director, who's done a lot of the legwork here on the legislation. Sarah and Sam, go ahead.
Thanks, Nate, and thanks for pulling this together. We really appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed working with all of the commissions and associations to understand where people are and what people are thinking and what might be really helpful to move this work forward. In Delaware County, we've seen some significant challenges with fire and EMS. And so we've met locally with people to really understand where they are and what would be helpful. And I think what the model that we've been talking about really provides an opportunity for scale and resource. And I've been involved in the nonprofit sector for a long time and seen what can happen when you can leverage scale and the ability to resource things thoroughly to achieve greater outcomes. And I think this model does that from a ground up level rather than a top down level. And I think that's one of the things that's been appealing locally for our community, is for people to have a voice and to, you know, to be involved in the creation of what is going to work in each local community. Because I think one of the things we hear all the time is, you know, one size doesn't fit all in PA. And so how could we come up with a model that allowed for that, but also achieved the scale and level of resource needed? So thanks for this opportunity, and we're excited about the conversation. I'm gonna let Sam chime in. He's really been doing a lot of the legwork and the heavy lift around this. We're grateful to have him on our team.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Sam Arnold. I'm Senator Carney's policy director. I'll try to be very brief since I've met with many folks on the call this morning already to talk about the concept and our approach. I'll just say, this has been a big issue for us in Delaware County, Chester County, and there's been a lot of interest in figuring out a way in the fire and EMS provider community to figure out a way to work better together and work in a way that's scaled and resourced. And so we were really happy that there's been so much attention on this issue from folks elsewhere in the state. We are really committed to putting forward smart and good bipartisan legislation. And through talking with all the stakeholders, the municipal associations, some of the service providers, folks in our county, almost everyone on the call here today, we heard over and over again to try to keep the legislation simple, to not over design anything, and to make it customizable so that counties can really use it to address the needs that are coming up in their regions and communities. The legislation that Nate sent around tried to reflect that, is just trying to be very simple and surgical in going into the Municipal Authorities Act, and broad. But I know that there are a lot of concerns that we need to work through. I don't think that we're not absolutely tied to the language that's in there now, but we really wanted to make sure our focus was regional and equitable in the design of these customizable authorities. That being said, I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback, hearing what the problems are, how we can address them, and make a product that will work and that folks will want to be able to replicate. The one last thing I'll say is that the Municipal Authorities Act provides really broad authorization to do a lot of different activities, and the way we've always wanted these or envisioned the public safety authorities is not to be top down, like Sarah said, but to be a bottom-up service provider for the companies in a county, and to be providing centralized services, doing things that are better taken care of together by folks, so that the companies can focus on doing their job, saving lives. I think that's it for me. And Nate, thanks again so much for putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. Sarah, thank you. Next up, recognize Senator Killian's office. We have with us today, Shannon Royer is Chief of Staff to Senator Killian, and also Krista Harrett, Legislative Director for Senator Killian. So Shannon, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Just to say briefly, no opening statement or anything from us, but just wanted to thank you, Nate, and Senator Regan's office and all the Senate offices for helping with this and being supportive, and especially Senator Carney. Working with Sam and Sarah over the last few months on this has been tremendous. Senator Killian, during his 4 years in the Senate and 13 years in the House, and going back to when he was on Delaware County Council, has always been supportive of anything that can be done to help first responders, EMS personnel, fire departments. In fact, when he was on county council, he was the point person for 911 and for emergency responders during his years there. So always looking for ways to try to find things that could be done to help first responders. And this really caught our attention because the Municipal Authorities Act, as Sam mentioned, allows so many things to be done at the county level and really at a regional level. If you can do sewer authorities at the county level, why the heck can't you do something to support EMS personnel at the county level? But we really are interested in what the pros and the cons are. Certainly we're familiar with a lot of the benefits. We've been researching that. And we want to make sure that this is not mandatory, that it's optional. As Sam referred to that. That's important to Senator Killian. This would be an optional plan for counties, not something that that Harrisburg will be forcing them to do. But we want to hear what the pros and cons would be, other experiences, how it would actually work once you get into the details. How the benefits that would occur from something like this being optional for all counties in the Commonwealth. So our thinking is that this is something that is definitely worth exploring. Senator Killian is very excited about this proposal and giving counties this option. And if we can do it countywide for other authorities, why not try and make this an option for first responders? So very interested in hearing what the experts have to say and what their concerns are and what their thoughts are. So again, thank you, Nate, for putting this together. Very much appreciated.
Krista, anything from your end?
Just short and concise. Look forward to hearing from everyone today. And on behalf of Senator Killian, look forward to working with you bipartisan manner, and we'll take good notes today. And Nate, thank you for your leadership putting this together.
Absolutely, thank you. Next up, we have Chris Ramsey from Senator Baker's office. Chris?
Good morning, everyone. This is a great forum. Most of these folks have already communicated amongst ourselves and put some work in on this. Senator Baker's interest stems from listening to her district, in particular Pike County, and there should be a lot of credit given to them for their work on exhaustively studying the situation in that county. And they created their own report of an assessment there of the situation, and they've worked since then. The other perspective I think that my boss has is being past chair of the Veterans Affairs Emergency Preparedness Committee. So she has a good understanding and knows a lot of the ins and outs. We are looking at this from an EMS perspective and the need there. I think what you're going to find over the course of this conversation is a lot of heads nodding and people are on the same page. And at the end of the day, the solution, I think, or the challenge is finding the best way to thread the needle. I think there's a lot of commonality here, and it's going to come out over the course of the conversation, just getting on the same page to figure out how best to really empower folks at the county level to do what's best in their community. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Next up, I'm going to recognize Dylan Ferguson, who's the Bureau Director for the Department of Health Bureau of EMS. And David Toth, the Legislative Director, might also be on the call with us as well. And if he has anything to say, certainly after Dylan. But Dylan, go right ahead.
Thank you, Nate. Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Fantastic. So first off, appreciate the invitation, Nate. Really appreciate you pulling this all together in the age of COVID and everybody willing to be flexible and be able to come and meet today. As it relates to the concept of authorities, I'll echo a lot of the things that have already been said. It's a tool that exists. It's a successful tool that's been utilized to provide a variety of other different services through different portions of the Commonwealth. And there have really been a couple of things that I guess would appeal to me, if you will. And one is what Sarah had mentioned as it related to scale. And the other things that you take a look at to relate to, the abilities to be able to generate revenue and to try to offset some different types of costs. And really, that is going to become even more and more important in the future. For those of you who know me, you know how much I like my numbers, and you know how much research I usually try to do before discussing an issue. So I was curious for the month of April just to see how significant of an impact that COVID-19 has had on billable revenues for emergency medical services through the Commonwealth. And what we found was very similar to what other states are seeing, is that our transport volumes for April 2020 as compared to April 2019 were down about 25% across the state. So that's going to include 911, that's going to include interfacility transfers, that is all billable transports. 29 counties saw reductions of over 30%, and there was one county who saw a 66% reduction month over month of what their volumes were. And just for perspective, that's, as it currently stands, EMS is only reimbursed a majority of the time for when they transport a patient to the hospital. So if you're a business owner, I want you to imagine, and some of us don't even have to imagine it, because we've all seen the economic impacts that COVID has had, but to lose 66%, if not more, of your revenues. So I used a conservative model based on the CMS fee schedule just to try to create an estimate as to how much funding, by not having those transports and not having those revenues, of what type of impact that there was to the EMS community. And please keep in mind that this is a bare bones minimum, because it doesn't take into effect all of the different payers and all the different fee schedules, but just based on the CMS fee schedule, a minimum of nearly $20 million was lost from emergency medical services agencies for just the month of April. So that when we look at the intermediate and the long-term impacts of how COVID is going to change not only business and economics and public safety, but also significant changes to healthcare, it's going to remain to be seen to what degree consumer confidence is going to return as it relates to healthcare systems. And that has a direct impact to emergency medical services. So, and also when we take a look at scale and things of that nature, Pennsylvania, we've got 1,349 different organizations that are licensed to practice EMS in some capacity. And 832 of them are transporting agencies, or individuals that can bill insurance to provide those services. And then another 507 that just provide first response, and as a result don't have that billing authority. And when we take a look at that, Pennsylvania has the second highest number of organizational operating units in EMS than any other state in the country. Second only to the state of Texas, interestingly enough. And so I think that there does exist some possibilities with authorities as it relates to shared services, as it relates to how some of these value services can be organized and funded. And certainly from a programmatic perspective here within the Bureau, I think that ability to allow things to be flexible and in that bottom-up approach is really going to serve well. Now, the only aspect that I'll kind of highlight, and I'm fairly certain that I'm not going to be the only person who's going to bring this issue up today, I think one of the technical issues that has to be considered is how can we, without impacting the public safety, if we go down this road of authorities, is there a way to be able to do some type of cost collection and cost recovery on behalf of the authority or on behalf of the agencies if they have to provide services on a regular or semi-regular basis for townships, boroughs, other municipalities who, for whatever reason, choose not to participate. That is really been an issue that has come up even pre-authorities of really the differences between the haves and the have-nots, if you will, as it relates to emergency services. So those are kind of just my opening thoughts, if you will. I look forward to the discussion today and look forward to hearing more. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Dylan. Dave, are you on the phone as well, or on the line as well, Dave Toth? If not, we're going to go right into, we also have on the line then, next is PA Emergency Health Services Council, both David Jones and Jeanette Swade. David Jones is president and Jeanette Swade is the executive director of the Health Services Council. David, you want to start off?
Sure, Nate, thank you. As Nate says, I'm Dave Jones. I'm the president of the Pennsylvania Emergency Health Services Council, and I'm a practicing paramedic. And I currently serve as the EMS manager for the Pennsylvania State University and State College. It was my honor to serve on the Sr6 Commission and chair the EMS task force. To begin, I must applaud the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania for taking the initiative to explore solutions to the problems facing the provision of emergency medical services in the Commonwealth. Commissioners Hamilton and Boozle, as co-chairs, had a daunting challenge, and the task force produced an excellent document with multiple options and recommendations. Before getting into details, I need to stress that the task force report gives us options, as stated in the report. Creating the ability for counties to form authorities provides additional tools for the provision of EMS in challenged areas. All aspects of the community need to be considered, and those ultimately responsible for the use of and participation in a proposed model should be taken into consideration as part of the planning process. It could be disastrous to introduce an authority into an area where the provision of EMS is currently functioning at a high level just to compensate for a neighboring locality that may be struggling. In that case, there may be better ways to help, such as mutual aid agreements or cooperative staffing models. The authority as designed must be responsive and flexible to meet the needs of the municipalities within the ability of the county or municipalities to support it financially. Communities should determine what level of service they want or need in consultation with local EMS providers. The authority must have the ability to change the system as the community's needs change over time. Any change to the current provision of service without the participation of the local agencies will meet resistance. Decisions to merge or affiliate multiple agencies should only be undertaken after constructive dialogue with providers while examining the positive and negatives associated with proposed actions. Data should be gathered and analyzed before any changes are proposed. In reviewing the task force report and the CCAP policy, there are several SR6 recommendations this could address. Number one, recruitment and retention. This can create a career ladder for personnel. They can move up from field providers to supervisors and into management. It can result in improved wages and benefits, but may result in losing volunteers. But volunteers can be accommodated in an authority. Provider education, both initial and ongoing, could be designed into the model. The third recommendation on ensuring minimum EMS coverage through government partnerships, the system would be designed to meet community requirements. Fourth recommendation, correct EMS reimbursement rates to allow for competitive compensation. A larger government provider may be able to negotiate with insurance carriers for better rates or better payment terms. Sixth recommendation, simplify process to regionalize EMS services. We can take advantage of economies of scale. Less personnel and vehicles in service at one time. We can have increased transparency of finances resulting from government oversight. The ability of the authority to level fees, fines, liens, and other fees can help with finances. The government entity may have access to grant dollars that smaller independent services do not have and may have seasoned grant writers at their disposal. Number 15, update EMS payment policies. Funding for readiness could be incorporated into a new funding model. And authorities could determine the level of service needed and desired, balancing the cost of those services with the added leverage of a better ability to negotiate payment rates. Number 16, educating municipal officials about EMS crisis. Municipal and county officials would be directly or indirectly involved in the oversight of the system and its challenges. And there are a few things I envision as drawbacks to an authority. Personnel that are currently working or volunteering at multiple services, as most of us do, could be restricted to only 40 hours per week if they're paid for that without paying overtime. This would result in a net loss of personnel available to work. Paid staff would lose tax credit and other benefits they may have received as volunteers. There may be less vehicles and personnel available to respond at any one time, hurting surge capacity in times of system stress. Funding for this authority may be viewed as a tax. Not every community would have an ambulance station in their area, and this may result in longer response times or could shorten current delays due to agencies being out of service due to a lack of funds or personnel. And this could be viewed as a loss of community support or involvement in the areas that do not have a station anymore. In summary, changes proposed to existing systems and agencies will be challenging and not without struggle. Substituting a county authority for several independent agencies will require significant discussions, expert consultation, and regulatory and legal work. For a local system failing financially, issues including the cost of readiness will need to be addressed in the redesign and implementation of the new system. Personnel shortages will not disappear overnight. Personnel will need to be recruited or developed and retained in the new system. Healthcare and payment models will change significantly in the next few years, and all communities' EMS systems will need to be resilient to weather these changes. In the last few years, community paramedicine has been introduced as a new concept in EMS that was not part of the regulatory landscape when the current EMS Act, Act 37 of 2009, was promulgated. Other current EMS concerns like critical care and interfacility transport, the needs of rural healthcare facilities, and transport to alternative care sites will need to be considered when building new systems of care. The EMS of the 1970s is very different than today's EMS, and we must be prepared to quickly adapt to the new challenges we will face. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, David. Jeanette? You're still on mute.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. We did a survey of our members, and that's where some of Dave's comments came from. And we can do another survey if we find anything in this meeting today that needs to be looked at from a global perspective amongst EMS providers. The survey, we actually had some good result, and he has covered those points in his comments today, but we did plan a meeting in March with our board to go over this and to have another presentation, but of course with COVID that was postponed. So we do have a vehicle to secure some more information from the field if necessary, and I just wanted to point that out to the group.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Yeah.
Next, at the last minute yesterday, I had invited the fire commissioner, Bruce Trego, and also Wes Majors here from PEMA in the fire commissioner's office. I see Wes is on the line. I don't know if the fire commissioner's on with one of the numbers I don't recognize, but Bruce or Wes, do you guys care to make any statement if you're on the line? It looks like Wes is muted as it is here, so we can come back to them if they get back on the line here. With that, then we will go to the Local Government Commission. And if you're not familiar with the Local Government Commission, it's made up of a bipartisan House Senate membership, and then a great staff that assists the General Assembly in crafting legislation important to local government. So we have Dave Green and Chris Grazzi here today with us. Dave, do you want to start off?
Well, thank you for the invitation, Nate. I'm glad to see everybody leaning forward and working on this proposal. I think if we start from the premise that voluntary regional tools are a good, intrinsically good thing to have available from a legislative standpoint, I think the Carney-Killian proposal is an excellent start. And one way that this is appropriate is that it is broadly enabling. It establishes the first hurdle, which is authorizing the project for an authority as it's being formed, restricting it to county authorities. And then we can examine the issue from the standpoint of what any additional statutory language is absolutely necessary, rather than working from a complex machine downward. We can start from broadly enabling language and work upwards from there if it is necessary. It has that advantages, and I think this is a proposal worth pursuing. Chris Grazzi in our office has chopped a lot of wood on this as well. So we're happy to be a part of the process.
Thanks, Dave. Chris?
Thanks. I'd like to echo many of Dave's comments there, and to say we are happy to be part of this meeting today. We've been happy to join the folks at CCAP for their ongoing task force, and to have worked with Sam as he's looked into this, and also we've spoken with Chris Ramsey on Senator Baker's proposal as well. I think that, first of all, I should make the caveat that the Local Government Commission is approaching this from a consultative role, not one in which we are endorsing any particular approach, and would not be endorsing any piece of legislation outside of our own legislative package. So we're mainly looking at this from how can we best assess pros and cons from the information that as we see it. I think it's really important to remember that no proposal in this space is likely to solve any local problem. I think what it creates instead is it creates a new toolbox by which local decision makers have the ability to solve their own problem if the tools are used wisely. And that's very true with this proposal from Senator Carney that we're looking at today. Being broadly enabling, there are a lot of decisions that have to go into setting up an authority that's shaped this way. Decisions like, how will you govern your authority? Who will sit on your authority? How will the authority interact with the municipalities that it serves? What are the purposes for the funding stream that you're going to create? And also, how are you going to wisely use the power to issue debt, which you get under the Authorities Act? These are in many ways new tools and exciting for the prospect of delivering emergency services in partnership with a new model. But they're really, really important considerations. If you end up in a scenario where you have a authority that is not reflective of the opinions of your local municipalities, that is kind of set up in an independent way and not created from the start for partnership, there's some pretty obvious areas for conflict that could emerge. But if you are able to navigate those through your bylaws and things along those lines, the possibility for regional cooperation is pretty excellent. So you have to look at that. You have to look at how non-participants will be handled, and things along those lines. And I guess the main policy question from a legislative perspective at some point becomes, how much of your broad, limited touch authorization to create an authority like this do you give up to introduce individual regulations for exactly what, from a statewide perspective, you'd want those authorities to look like? And it's a tough policy question with its own positives and negatives. So that's kind of our starting point from how we've looked at this so far, and we're eager to continue to participate.
Dave and Chris, thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn it over to the County Commissioners Association. We have on the line with us Lisa Schaefer, the Executive Director, and we have Mark Hamilton and Kevin Boozle. Mark is a commissioner from Tioga County. Kevin is the commissioner from Butler County. Both were instrumental. Mark was on the Sr6 Commission Task Force, and both Mark and Kevin co-chaired the EMS report here for the County Commission Association. And then we'll hear from Tim Knapp, who is from Pike County, Emergency Management Director. So Lisa, do you want to start us off and then turn it over to the commissioners?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nate. So looking at obviously in our task force report, one of the key things that we determined we wanted to work on implementation going forward is the development of this authority model to allow an authority to be used for public safety purposes. I think, having looked at the different drafts and the different thoughts that are out there, we agree that we want the framework to allow this to be as simple and as flexible as possible. Understanding that, of course, as we always say about local government and things that go on locally, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. So there will be obviously different ways and different setups that will work better across the state. Speaking specifically to the draft that we saw for this meeting, We did talk with our task force earlier this week and had a couple of pieces of feedback. One is in looking at the definition of public safety or public safety projects. We would recommend keeping the focus on the first 3 items in that list. So the fire protection services, emergency medical services, and ambulance services, and keeping the rescue services, emergency management services, hazmat, and 911 out of that list. Those latter 4 already have some funding streams, and some commingling of those funds that already exist could make things get kind of sticky, especially when you start talking about things like 911 and how that funding formula works and things like that. And those items are also already generally a countywide function, so there's a little bit less of it's a little bit of a different structure than we see with the fire and the EMS on the local level. The other recommendation we would make is to support an effort from multi-municipal authorities as well as county-based authorities, so that if you have a county, for instance, that does not choose to get into this space, you would have the ability for local municipalities to still be able to leverage this kind of structure to help address local issues. We did have a question going back to the definition of public safety projects. Why emergency medical services and ambulance services are broken out. So we just at some point during the discussion hope to get a little bit of clarity on what the distinction is there, and where and if community care and risk reduction fit into any of those pieces there. A couple of other recommendations that we just had. One is whether we can look at whether this authority, if it's created, can become some sort of singular entity for grants and applications, so that if there is an authority and you still have local entities providing service, that there's a way to make sure that the funding doesn't stay fragmented. There's a way to kind of coordinate that at the authority level. And kind of just understand, do individual agencies and departments retain their own autonomy? Or, can we run all the financials through the larger entity? What happens with the state funding and things of that nature? One other thing we also, I think it's been talked about a little bit here, is obviously there's a lot of details. So even with a simple structure, there's a lot of details to be developed in terms of your articles of incorporation, how you set up the rest of this on a local level, and would like to recommend some language and some resources that perhaps a state entity such as DCED that's worked in this local government space could be available to provide legal assistance to our local governments to help them work through to make sure these are set up appropriately. So I'll close by just saying we certainly want to recognize Pike County for sure for starting this conversation and helping us to move forward on this. We recognize, I think I've said before, this is not a silver bullet to solve local EMS issues, but it could certainly be a very significant tool in our pockets to help address a lot of the issues that we're seeing on the ground. And with that, I'll turn it over to the commissioners to see if I missed anything or if they'd like to add anything.
Thank you, Lisa. This is Kevin Boozle from Butler County. First of all, I really want to thank Nate and everyone on this group. I think that it's very impressive that you've been able to wrangle this group together with all these different entities, and I think that alone is saying a lot for each one of the entities that are playing in the space. With that being said, I also want to commend you for putting this out in front before. Normally we see bills after they're written and then we weigh in on them, and this is a unique way. This is the first for me, I got to be honest with you, to get in front of it and really help guide some really trouble spots that if you can avoid them, I think this bill will go much better for all the entities. To Lisa's point, I think that this space of emergency services is a unique space anyways. As a firefighter EMS myself, I can tell you that as you all know, if you've ever worked in this space or have been just working on it because of this bill, they're a tough group to wrangle sometimes, and they're very autonomous. And so you have to play in their space, and taking it down to that level and letting them have input and is exactly what you're doing. And I give you all the credit in the world. I think Dylan has made it very clear that the system that we have will not continue the way it is. There will be changes, and getting out in front of them of the paradigm shift is going to matter moving forward. I think that the bill itself, as we reviewed it, has some really broad ways of handling this scenario, and I think that what I would caution is the tighter you wrangle with it, the harder it'll be to implement on a local level. So keeping it as broad, I would encourage you to do that, and then building up the service from the ground up and letting the local flavor push it. This, I believe it was Mr. Jones had said that this will probably not work in everywhere because there are some really well run entities that are running almost as an authority because they are sort of the spearhead of that area. So it may not be needed, and I think that local leaders understand that and probably better than most, at least in their county or in their municipality. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you. I'm really impressed with where this is going. And it is not the silver bullet. We know that it is another tool for us and local government. And I commend you for helping us put it in the toolbox. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Good morning.
Mark?
Yes, good morning, folks. I first of all wanted to say to Nate, thank you very much for, again, taking this on, making sure that the things that we talked about probably almost 2 years ago with the Sr6 Commission, we're moving stuff forward this time. And a big share of that is because of you, Nate. And thank you for your work on this. I think Kevin and Lisa shared most of our points. I did want to state that in our talking with our task force over the last year and a half, the county commissioners do not want to take over these responsibilities. From day one, we've said, what can we do to help? And that's what we are looking at. Where can we help our local municipalities? So we want to work with our local municipalities. And so I think, again, just to say, it's very important for it to be as simple and as flexible as possible, so that as Kevin stated, from the ground up, that we can build systems that will support our local communities. And again, it's very, very important for this to be an optional. I don't think we want to interfere with any location that has a good working EMS system or a fire system that is working well in their community. Again, just give us another tool in the toolbox that we can make our systems work. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. And then next we have Tim Knapp with the Emergency Management Director of Pike County. You heard a little bit before Pike County being referenced. So with that, Tim, turn it over to you.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank Nate and everyone else for pulling all this together. As most of you know, Pike County is based in mostly a rural setting of approximately 56,000 people with a summer population around 100,000. As with a lot of our rural counties, we see, the 45-minute to an hour on-scene response times to get an ambulance. We have great responders that take pride in their jobs, but as with most areas, being able to recruit volunteers is coming to an end. And this possesses a huge problem for the municipalities of Pike County that don't have the taxables to support such a system. We wholeheartedly agree that this should be the choice of the municipality to enter any authority, and it shouldn't be forced on anybody. We have worked with our municipalities and created, a lot of you might have seen the Pike County EMS plan that was circulated. a few of the facts that we've seen on our EMS plan is the fact that myself, I pay for an ambulance tax in my township. If we were to initiate that county-wide, I'd be paying half of what I pay right now. If we don't get a chance to form a municipality, we see our system failing even more. If COVID-19 taught us anything, it's the fact that we have major flaws in our EMS system. Did we pull through and get through it? Yeah. Could we do it again? I don't know. I really don't. As was said before, I think by Mr. Jones, this is not for everybody in Pennsylvania. Some have great systems that work very well for them. We have a mixed system here in Pike County. We have half paid and we have half volunteer. Some of our volunteer ambulances see 700 calls a year. We have great municipalities that support their EMS upwards of $500,000 a year to provide that BLS agency. And we have municipalities that don't give a dime to the system and pay into it. And all that does is create turf wars for us because everybody wants to know where their ambulance was that they're paying for when the time of a call comes. And when it's in another municipality doing it for nothing. The authority it can open the door to so many things. Like I said, it shouldn't be forced on anybody, but it's that giant tool in the toolbox. Let's face it, we live in a society where money drives everything. I have some municipalities that have taxables of $16,000. What's that going to get us? Half a month of ambulance service? So by pooling together and using our resources, the authority is the way to go forward. I do believe keeping it simple, keeping it to the EMS and fire and not bringing in 911 that has its own legislation and EMA that has its own legislation. But, I believe I've been in emergency services 35 years, and I believe working with the responders here in Pike County who are great people, they know, pride and ego kill a lot of people, and they're willing to set that aside to join into a group and provide a better service for all. Once again, I'd just like to thank everybody for inviting me to sit on this round table, and it's something I'm very passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next up, we're going to have the Pennsylvania Councils of Governments. We have with us Steve Baer, who's with Center County COG and is another former member of the Sr6 Commission. Steve?
Thank you and good morning. I just would like to say that basically I'm the fire chief here in State College. Our system proves the benefits to leverage scale. We have an opt-in, opt-out system, and so our system also demonstrates the feasibility of allowing individual municipalities to act to solve one's own problem, so to speak, and to decide what's ultimately best for them. So I would encourage anyone who is not familiar with the opportunities and the benefits of regionalization to feel free to pay us a visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association. We have Jenny Shade, Director of Government Relations, and Jennifer Case, Government Relations Liaison. Jenny?
Hello. Thank you, Nate, for inviting us to this forum. We really appreciate it. We were first approached by Sam Arnold and Sarah in Senator Carney's office regarding this topic, and so we've had a lot of good conversations with them, and just to better understand the Municipality Authorities Act, since this is the act that we're looking to amend. I guess first off, I'm going to say that while we at PMAA would not want to push the idea of public authorities on any particular municipalities or counties, we certainly are here to help where it makes sense. So opening up our act to help with that, we are absolutely supportive of. We're interested in learning more about public safety and that side of things. Since up until this point, that has not been projects of ours. For the most part, it has happened in some places where it made sense across the state, but it's not really a subject matter that we've been involved with much. So we're very interested to hear that side of things. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to give you kind of a background on our act, just like a little bit of a historical perspective, how things work. And we did have, you know, some comments, maybe some concerns about the language as is. I think some of those were actually already brought up on today's call. So I think that a lot of us are thinking of the same things already. But with that, I will turn it over to Jen.
Well, thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Nate, for holding this meeting and bringing us together on this important issue. We really appreciate it. And as Jenny said, I just was going to give you a brief historical perspective on this, if it's helpful to some. But as Jenny said, PMAA is supportive of the overall concept of using the authority model for projects, you know, such as EMS, fire protection, and we appreciate that the draft legislation is written in a very streamlined manner and relatively clean to accomplish that goal. And I know that many of you have mentioned that already, Sam and others, how it is to be as flexible as possible and streamlined. Again, it being an optional kind of thing, absolutely, and we agree with that. But I thought it might be helpful for everyone just to provide a brief background on municipal authorities and how they work. Just from a historical perspective, the enabling legislation for authorities was first enacted in 1935 and had a comprehensive rewrite in 1945. And most recently, the act was codified in 2001, creating a new chapter entitled 53, Chapter 56. And the act permits roughly 22 projects that authorities can undertake, and probably most of you are aware the ones that are most prevalent. Those are mostly environmental related, such as services that they provide, drinking water treatment and distribution, sewage collection and treatment, and solid waste and recycling services. So municipal authorities are quasi-governmental. We've talked about control and who has control, and one thing to keep in mind, since they are created by a township, a borough, a city, or a county, and municipal authority board members are appointed by those municipalities, the municipality is actually creating it, they can be created by a single municipality, they can be created jointly with 2 or more municipalities or that work together and decide to create the authority together, or by a county. And all of them may serve beyond political boundaries, which allows for multi-municipal or regional ability to serve customers. And that's what's so nice about the flexibility, that the political boundaries are not an issue, and it can be done on a broad multi-municipal or regional level. The municipality has the power to create the authority and the power to dissolve it. And the elected officials of that municipality that creates the authority exclusively make the appointments to the authority board. By design, once created, the operations and conduct of the authority is exclusively determined by the municipal authority board and the authority employees. So just a couple cautions that we have, and I think they've already been, this one has already been addressed, but we don't want to compromise areas of the Municipality Authorities Act that could potentially alter or that would impact authorities, including county authorities that provide water, wastewater, solid waste services, anything with their operations, their authority board appointments, and the ability to charge uniform and reasonable rates, any current ones, and certainly any of those that would be created in the future. And we do feel that the legislation, the draft legislation as currently written, does a pretty good job of, again, keeping it clean and streamlined. And moving forward, we hope that that goal is maintained. One other caution, or perhaps maybe a pitfall, is that, and as we thought about this more and more, limiting it to only counties to create these authorities could potentially not receive the amount of buy-in or acceptance we hope it would. I think Lisa Schaefer even mentioned this, thinking about it even from a multi-municipal level, not necessarily having to be county. And we're very open to discussion on this and what all you think. Because we have the flexibility in the Authorities Act. We understand that the very important goal of this legislation is to create regional, multi-municipal public safety authorities to not only collect fees, but also provide operational efficiencies and economies of scale when providing these services. So one thing to consider that we'd like to hear from all of you, and what you may think is the best structure providing these services, and providing the most or obtaining the most buy-in or incentivizing this as much as possible is, should we consider the idea of joint authorities, which are created by 2 or more municipalities that decide to go together and create an authority? They may receive that may be more palatable to folks than maybe at a county level. The complete opposite side of the spectrum is that you may have 2 or more counties, and the counties could answer this question, whether or not you might have a couple counties that want to form a public safety authority together. And the draft legislation as written wouldn't really allow this, but if it were joint authorities, then 2 counties could go together and certainly provide, become an authority and provide it on a much larger regional level. So those are things to consider that we'd love to hear from all of you in this discussion. And we want to offer, as much flexibility as possible so that it is well received by as many as possible moving forward. So those are the things I just wanted to mention, and we really look forward to talking with all of you and working on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny and Jennifer. Appreciate your involvement in today's discussion. Next up, we're going to have Don DeRemus, who's the legislative chair of the Pennsylvania Ambulance Association and was also a member of the Sr6 Commission. Don, go ahead.
Morning. Good morning from Arrett County. Well, first, I want to thank Senator Pittman and the executive directors of vets on both sides of the House and the Senate for getting the crisis through and getting it to the governor's desk. It's greatly appreciated. I'm going to be the contrarian here on this. I believe the authority needs to be created to generate revenue to provide to the EMS system. I got a little freaked out looking at the concept deck from Mr. Arnold with all the control there. The EMS system is really diverse in Pennsylvania. So you have for-profits, municipal, nonprofits, and then you have totally volunteer services working in a community. And I cannot see the buy-in from the EMS community with top-down effort with contracts and municipalities opting in and opting out. From the legislation standpoint, from the draft, the way that the creation of the authority is written, it's going to restrict it to the counties solely. There's 6 or 7 municipal authorities already, EMS authorities already existing in Pennsylvania, especially out in Western Pennsylvania, and I believe Johnstown. In my opinion, that would completely wipe them out as being not to be able to have their authority, their municipal authority. I also have an issue with trying to figure out how the county authority model would usurp the current existing borough and township code and the third-class city code, where it's the responsibility of the municipality to provide EMS and actually select those EMS services. Because you're currently designated either by resolution or RFP presently, and I don't know how the county authority could take control from the municipality with ambulance designation. We have no issues with counties collecting revenue and sending it down to EMS. My service is in the eastern part of the state, and we also serve part of the Poconos, and I have great respect for Pike County because we just did a 45-minute response for a cardiac arrest in Pike County from Monroe County. That's how bad the service is up there of not being available at times. So it actually hinders my service area because I'm getting pulled into Pike County from Monroe County. I don't think it should be an option because we're a well-run service and we still need funding because the reimbursement streams are below cost revenue. COVID has destroyed us financially because all our non-emergency business is non-existent. And a funding source is needed just to maintain capital equipment. And the joint authority, you still have the issue of paying for EMS outside. So if I have a joint authority with multiple municipalities and then I get mutual aided out to some places in the central part of the state, they're getting mutual aided 2 counties away. You're still paying for a service that you're not getting. And I'm just here to listen to the conversation and figure out where this is going. I believe it's needed. I just don't know how I'm going to get buy-in from our members on another layer of bureaucracy over our system.
Everybody was so happy and going forward with this until Don, but no, Don, thank you very much for your input. We do need us all to be real here on whether, if we go down this road, again, the pitfalls that are there, and have this legislation right at the beginning. So I certainly do appreciate your perspective there. Hitting cleanup here today is the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute. We have Jerry Ozog, who's the new executive director of the Institute. And Jerry was a member of the Sr6 Commission as well. And we also have with us here as well today, Gary Waters, who's with the director of EMS, chief with Altoona, Logan Township. So Jerry, go ahead.
Nate, I'm going to step in and go ahead of Jerry here. It's Gary Waters. First, I want to say thank you for inviting me. I think I bring a little different aspect for it. The Altoona Logan Township Mobile Medical Emergency Department Authority, we also go by AMED. AMED is a municipal authority. We were formed in 1981. We were formed to provide ambulance services. There were 10 municipal authorities created in the late 70s, early 80s. Currently, there still exist 8. 6 of those are in Allegheny County, 1 is in Blair County, and 1 is in Huntington County. To give you a perspective of AMED, your draft legislation works. It is a concept that will work. Will it work for everybody? No, but it will work for many. AMED was created by the city of Altoona and Logan Township, so it is a joint authority. It was created, like I said, in 1981. We at that time only provided service to the city of Altoona and Logan Township, but the way the bylaws were written, we could progress to any municipality who so desired. Currently, we provide service to 24 municipalities covering 490 square miles in parts of 5 different counties. Of that, we cover a population of about 105,000 people. We have 104 employees, 16 volunteers. We also, if you look at the PowerPoint that was sent out yesterday about selling this, we also subcontract with 3 volunteer fire companies to provide QRS service. And we have a contract agreement with 1 501c3 ambulance service to provide management for them. There are some hurdles being a municipal authority because of the way the Municipal Authority Act is written, meaning we don't have any solid funding stream. We do not receive any tax money from any of those 24 municipalities. That's very apparent that that's got to change because of this whole COVID situation, because nobody's paying for readiness. But in fact, we do not and have not for 35 years received any tax money. We have strictly survived on billing for service and being more efficient because we're covering such a large area. And it has worked, and it will work in other areas, but it may not work in some. So I think the point is by amending the Municipal Authorities Act to allow for a public safety agency, I'm not necessarily sure I agree with at a county level. I think it needs to be a multi-jurisdictional authority or joint authority, gives the best flexibility. And I think the selling points that I have to this is, and the selling points that when I talk to any municipality about providing services, is that the joint authority brings transparency. We're subject to public audits. Our meetings are subject to the Sunshine Act. We are subject to right to know. And, part of DCED and everywhere you look at is pushing joint municipal or intergovernmental municipal agreements and cooperation. And these joint authorities are prime examples of those. So like I said, it's a model that works. Again, there are currently 8 municipal authorities that provide ambulance service. If you have any questions, please ask.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Very great discussion, and I think this is public safety, fire and emergency medical services are essential for the community service and public safety in Pennsylvania. And all of you have an important part at the policy level to assist the field and operations level people. And this is something that is transformative, and if this is able to get across the goal line, will definitely help. We've talked about systems problems in Pennsylvania for the past 35 years. The traditional methods of providing service are no longer working. The Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute is an advocacy and educational organization. We represent volunteer and career emergency services across the Commonwealth. Our mission is to improve and sustain services that are critical. Every day, and I'm not telling you anything new, is dedicated volunteer and career personnel respond to crashes on our interstates and the turnpike. They respond to chemical spills in suburban facilities and have fires and emergency services in large metro areas. We have been challenged, as we all know that Pennsylvania's demographics and population is changing. We know from 2010 to 2017, certain areas of Pennsylvania, the population has been increasing. However, many counties, boroughs, and townships have experienced a great decrease in population, greater than 3%. The population is getting older. This dramatically changes an organization's abilities to recruit volunteers and the impact of growing communities in Pennsylvania. Not necessarily, we've seen more transitions to combination organizations where there is has been a volunteer crisis and moving into more combination areas. And again, that is in the suburban Philadelphia area, the Lehigh Valley, South Central Pennsylvania, Western Allegheny, and Northern Washington County, and Southern Butler County. Those systems have designed and changed on their own. Traditional volunteer fire companies have moved to a combination of both paid and volunteer. The things that have been going on for the past 25 years, mergers have occurred to deal with the best use of equipment, and municipal governments have either assumed some responsibility for providing fire protection and have started to look at things proactively. Based upon my research, the 3 top problems in Pennsylvania in emergency services, mostly what we deal with is fire. The 3 top problems is number 1, money. Number 2, internal organizational problems. And number 3, a lack of volunteers. And I'm not going to get into my whole speech in regards to talking about those. I can get into great details in regards to that, and we all know that. What are the trends? How do we continue to provide essential community services? And the bottom line is what we have encouraged our organization and with many of you is those local emergency services cooperating with local government by defining the expectations for service. I've heard that several times in here. Expectations from local government and expectations from the emergency services organization. What type of response time do you want? What do you need? How many personnel do you need to arrive at the scene? And once you define that, you can set the cost of the system, the units that are available that are needed to do that. Regionalization has occurred in some areas across Pennsylvania, and regionalization should occur. Regionalization allows for hiring of professional leadership that can focus on organizational sustainability. I'm a huge fan of that. And the more combination systems that we have, the better. And we view the concept of an authority as that coordinating agency to be able to help with some of those operational things. Again, not taking over small organizations, but maybe the ability to do some of the administrative aspects of assisting nonprofit organizations, which is the majority of organizations in Pennsylvania. So I'll kick it off with that. We must modernize our system in Pennsylvania to ensure that Mrs. Smith, who is our customer, it's the lady that lives in your community that may have a heart attack or a broken finger, her house may catch on fire, or her basement may be flooded with water. We do have the capability and brain power in Pennsylvania to figure this out. We just need the vision, the courage, and the political will to make the necessary changes. We fully support the concept of cooperation with all the partners here that are on the phone. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Nate.
Thank you, Jerry. Thanks everyone for the intro statements. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of the general discussion here. If you can, at this point, if you want to turn your microphones on when you want to speak, if you want to raise your hand, I'll keep my eyes open and then recognize you. This is another first in terms of a conversation. There's several entities that are not on this conversation right now. Like I said, I invited the Fire Commissioner's office here at the last minute. I had wanted to focus this on primarily on the EMS side, particularly since the County Commissioners Association had focused on the EMS port. But the Kearney-Killian proposal does have the fire inside there. So if we're going to proceed with fire, we're going to need to bring in number of entities into that equation. Local government associations are not a part of this conversation right now. We have the Local Government Commission, we have the County Commissioners Association, but not the townships and the boroughs and the cities yet in this conversation. So that's another conversation to have on that front. The first question I have really, if we put this out there in terms of this legislation and we get it enacted into law, the overall concept here of a countywide authority or multi-municipal authority, do we have the expertise right now, either in state government, I might put this into Dylan or anybody else that wants to answer it in terms of, do we have the expertise in terms of the technical folks that would be available to help counties and municipal authorities to go in this realm? Right now, if fire companies want to merge or go regional, DCD has traditionally had one person there to help out on that front. Do we have the expertise right now to assist in this? Dylan, are you still there? Can you help lead us off on that?
Nate, I sure am. So you're right in that the fact that usually when it comes to authorities and intergovernmental agreements, mergers, consolidations, that usually does fall into DCED's lap. From the understanding that I have, I do know that they have that one individual who is dedicated to that function, and that's what they predominantly are. But I think that the one thing that's really been hit on is that, and I can't remember who said it, it may have been Don, but there would be a lot of legal aspects that would have to be done. And while there are certain things that we can provide some general answers to questions, there is that line that things come up to where it crosses over into providing legal advice, which Commonwealth agencies, as I'm sure that you're well aware, are not permitted to engage in. So there's that one component. I think that if this were something that were that would really begin to take off, if you will, I think that there would have to be a look at the different resources that exist. And to really identify whether or not those resources align with current circumstances and current things being performed. The other aspect is, I had heard one offer today, really that kind of outlines that assistance, and if I'm not mistaken, that was the Municipal Authorities Association. And I really think that they would probably be in a stronger position to really kind of be able to outline, exactly how this process works. But obviously DOH and other state agencies, to the extent possible and to the extent permitted under law, would be happy to answer, whatever questions and provide whatever consultation that we can. But obviously, in this limited environment, it's difficult for me to make projections for things that are predominantly handled by other state agencies.
Thanks, Dylan. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
This is Kevin, Butler County. I think that one of the things that we do is lean on our state associations to take legislation and drill it down to our levels, whatever level that may be, whether it be county or municipal. And I think that we have a legal counsel that comes from there that they'll advise. And then on our local county level, we have a solicitor that would assist us in setting up the authority if it were a countywide. And even if it wasn't a countywide, if it was a multi-municipal, and obviously our 911 is, we're all going to benefit from this no matter what level this is. So I don't believe that any county would have an issue providing that resource in establishing that authority. So that is not a concern of mine as far as the legality of addressing it. In fact, Jens actually, another attorney in Butler County that was bringing some proposals to us, was more than willing to do that. But again, every county is a little different, and I really believe that this is something that we could tackle at our level.
Anybody else on that?
Mark Hamilton, even on the municipal side, if it was a multi-municipal, we have several of those types of entities in our locale, and they all have solicitors of their own. And we also have several solicitors that have helped set those types of authorities up. So I think there's ample opportunity there to take care of that concern.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? It's 10:50 right now. It's my understanding that a couple of the county commissioner association folks, Lisa and Mark and Kevin, are going to be signing off here at 11 o'clock. Mark or Kevin or Lisa, do you have anything else you'd like to state here before you need to head off?
I don't know that Lisa's still on, but just again, I want to reiterate our appreciation, and I think that this is going to be a long conversation to get where we need to be, and that's fine, and we gladly participate in that. I do want to reiterate one thing that Lisa said. I think it's extremely important. I believe the legislation, that the way it's written, is county authority. We really do want to see the multi-municipalities re-included in that. And that would be one of my last statements for today, but I appreciate the offer and keep us informed.
Thank you, Kevin. Are there any questions here? I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you again as well, and Kevin summed it up well. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions here at the County Commissioners Association before they need to leave? And there's Lisa back on there. Lisa, anything you'd like to say before you need to get off?
No, I really appreciate the discussion that we've had here this morning. A lot of good points have come up. I hope that we can come up with a game plan to get the legislation with the framework kind of moving forwards, and figure out how we best provide resources and support to implement that framework and really make it work on the local level. I think there's a lot of promise here. As I've heard before, a good tool in the toolbox, and hoping that we can really get this going.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the County Commissioners Association as a whole here for, not only being part of the Sr6 Commission, but staying involved with the creation of this task force and coming up with this recommendation and staying on this issue as a whole. So thank you for all of your work on this front. Greatly appreciate it.
I just have one statement to leave you with, if you don't mind, and it's just off the cuff. It's brand new. We in Butler County, we're putting out a reopening plan, and I know Dylan's on this call, and part of that plan we've tried to incorporate, and we've asked our EMS providers as using them possibly as contact tracing and testing service. So we have, not all EMS providers will do this or want to do this, but we wanted to help stand up the EMS service financially and provide additional work. So I'm just throwing it out there as we begin to go green here in Pennsylvania and moving forward. Something to keep in mind. I think it's a good way to maybe support our local EMS. So just something to think about. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin. The other, we've had a couple things. I see Noah here. I'll recognize you here in a second. The one next question I have here, really, I guess it's not really a question, but we've had it repeated several times now, not just to have a county-wide authority, but the multi-municipal authority. So it seems like we're in general agreement on that front, and we can work to add something to the mix. But Noah, go ahead. You had a question.
Yeah, well, and sort of going back, I think to a couple of points. What the the state government can do, and what can we do at the state level. I think something that needs to go in tandem with this is changing or adjusting the grant process and how we the fire and EMS grant is the first one that comes to mind. Though PEMA does plenty of other grants, making sure that entities that decide to move to this level, whether it's municipal level, county, multi-county, if that's a decision they want to make, that the grants are still available, and maybe even we use the grants as an incentive to move in direction. I think that's a really important aspect to keep in mind as we push Senator Carney and Senator Killian's legislation. One quick question and then more of an open-ended question. So Mr. Knapp, did you say that at least in your municipality, your EMS fee that you would pay would actually go down if you were able to create a county level authority?
Yes, sir. It'd go down by about 1/3, and you would have a better service when we did our fact finding.
Okay, I think that's a really interesting point there that often we see this as or this could be seen as a county implementing a tax and causing citizens to pay more, when in fact in some cases, I'm sure not all, there might actually be some cost savings. And then this might be for the county commissioners folks, or Steve Baer or other folks involved on the sort of been in this space. But what are some of the whether it's federal grants or other sort of funding opportunities that might be available moving to this model? Knowing that sometimes whether it's federal or maybe private sector foundation grants, whatever it might be, that reward this level of organization.
Well, no, two things. First of all, I would agree with the gentleman from Pike County on our experience relative to the cost savings. We're easily 1/3 on the fire side, less than the communities we benchmark with volunteer fire services as far as direct cash contributions and support to fire companies. So I'll just put that out there. Relative to state and local grants, the suite of grants on the fire side are the SAFER grant for recruiting and retention, fire prevention and safety grant, which is extremely difficult for a municipal staff fire department to get. It's more geared to large national entities who do research and broad national level programs. And then finally, the Assistance to Firefighters grant, which is geared to equipment, and Pennsylvania typically does pretty well in that space. All of those grants favor regional cooperation explicitly. So I think what you would find is you would probably find two things. I think you would find a probably slightly higher degree of success in securing some of those federal dollars on behalf of Pennsylvania. And more importantly, I think you would have grant money that would then be would be funding things that are genuinely sustainable. One of my big personal beefs with the federal grants, both SAFER and AFG, are you have a lot of things that prop people up for 3 to 5 years, and then in 3 to 5 years you got nothing to show for it. You're right back in the soup, and that is a real serious problem with those grant programs.
No, any follow-up from your end on that? Okay. Sam, you heard a little bit here about the multi-municipal authorities. Was that in any of the initial drafts of your legislation? And I take it there's no issue with adding that in here down the road, correct?
It's a tricky question of just how do you, where's the minimum, I guess, of, because what we chose the county is because we were trying to figure out what's the best way to get to a regional approach. You know, every region is different. So we were, you know, what's the minimum number of municipalities that would have to be part of a joint authority? What we're trying to avoid is different parts of the counties splitting off into, I guess, multi-municipal teams. We want to avoid replicating, you know, well, the more affluent townships might have their own authority, and then the less affluent townships might, you know, get theirs, and then you're basically reproducing, you know, the failing systems, underfunded systems. So the county, trying to approximate it at the county was an attempt to get at that without trying to over-design or over-complicate the kind of minimum requirements. I think if we can find a way to allow for multi-municipal or joint authorities and still ensure that they're encompassing a broad region, that you know, we could definitely add that in. But what we want to avoid is just replicating like the fragmented kind of nature of everyone having their own little fiefdom and people not wanting to play with each other. But now they can also assess fees and you know, raise the money individually. I think the regional approach really does wonders for scale and efficiencies and cost savings. Just want to kind of preserve that aspect of the legislation. But I think, you know, if we can get folks on board, there can be a way to do that with joint and multi-municipal authorities.
It goes back to that scale piece, and how do we make sure that that's achieved? And not in particular when you're talking about mergers, you often get communities that are very similar feeling comfortable with one another, so let's do something together. But just as Sam said, you know, you put 2 or 3 municipalities that they're compromised, it doesn't necessarily then result in one that's stronger. You just end up with something that might still be compromised. There's just more of it. And so how do we make sure there's some sort of metric that achieves that scale that we want to get to?
Anybody else want to weigh in on the multi-municipal aspect? Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. I wouldn't get too hung up on minimum scale. For example, so our system, we provide fire protection for 4.5 municipalities, and we are there's a municipality next door to us that taxes directly for fire protection, and we are half of the per capita costs that they are in that one township. So it's going to vary dramatically county to county to county. So I just think if you get yourself wrapped up at that level of detail, you're gonna basically stymie yourself with no good outcome. I think that the idea, you know, Sam early on, when I had the opportunity to sit and have him walk through the pitch, so to speak, you know, pointed out this is a groundswell, you know, grassroots kind of a opt-in thing, and I think that alone is gonna carry a lot of these kind of concerns, because look, if it's like the cog. I tell people who want to look at opt-in and out of something within the cog, look, if you can do it cheaper on your own, by all means, go do it cheaper on your own. You know, you have that responsibility, taxpayer, but chances are you can't do it that way. And it doesn't really take a lot of municipalities to band together to reap some real positive benefits. So don't get too hung up on that one.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Gary?
I'll echo the same thing that Steve did. You know, like in our case, we were simply the city of Altoona, Logan Township, and over the years, the municipalities in the rest of the county have seen the benefit of coming into and having service provided by the authority. So our board is appointed by the city of Altoona and Logan Township. That's not been a hurdle for us, these municipalities. We cover all economy of scale in these different counties, and they're just appreciative that they're getting a solid service with transparency to cover their community. So again, I wouldn't get hung up on how do we limit it, because I think when you do limit it, you're gonna take out the benefit of what you're trying to implement.
Thanks, Gary. Gary, back to you again on, you mentioned earlier that there was 10 similar entities that were formed, and now we're down to 8, is that correct? Were there any pitfalls there from going to 10, the 2 went by the wayside, is that right?
Yeah, so there were 10. The 2 that there's one that's listed as inactive and the other one terminated. They were both, one was in Allegheny County, one was Homestead, and the other one was in Westmoreland County, which was Upper Kiski. The Homestead one terminated, and I think they just had some difficulties and where service was provided by a different means. I can't speak to the Kiski one, but the remaining 8 continue to provide service, and some of them are fairly large organizations.
Thank you. Well, let's open up. Chris Gazzi, go ahead.
So one of the things that I wanted to say, kind of in response to the last couple of things about the pure advantage of economy of scale, is that economy of scale may not be enough on its own to encourage the pooling of resources. And we can see this from the fact that we have the ability for virtually any service that any municipality can provide to enter into an intergovernmental cooperation agreement or form a council of government under a very, very similar set of circumstances. And yet this is not a super popular option around the Commonwealth, where cool heads prevail and a good system gets rolling. Sometimes it persists, but there is not nearly as much service sharing as virtually anybody who works in this space would like to see. And it's because it's very difficult to get these going. So one of the things that having a larger entity that puts some framework in and then is able to invite in the smaller participants gives you is the idea that there is this one entity that exists, and then being able to move out from there, rather than it simply being 2 municipalities getting together, because you will face a scenario where the maximum amount of efficiency is achieved between a few similar municipalities or a few affluent municipalities, as Sam mentioned, and you will have dead spots. And the dead spots are going to end up being a cost under mutual aid, but they may not be invited to the table in the same way if it's totally hands off from a regulatory perspective.
Thanks, Chris. Steve?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Chris said, and we tend to focus on the financial aspects. Remember that we're largely across Pennsylvania still volunteer based, although obviously going in transition some places. So remember that I work a lot with a lot of rural county. I mean, Center County is very rural. Aside from us, we are the odd duck, in Center County, and I work all up through McKean County, Tioga County, into Clearfield County, Elk County. So there's a swath of stuff up there that's really, really rural. And you're talking about, also facilitating the sharing of the population within the county of emergency responders, which is really, really an important aspect. And Chris is right. It is hard to, setting up a council of governments is not a small feat. So you know, having a small municipality like a township that has, you know, how, you have 3 supervisors and one's the road agent, you know, you're not talking about people who have a lot of expertise and time and the ability to take on this kind of thing, which is why I personally really like the idea of having this rooted in the county, is giving them the opportunity to take a leadership role and to draw in something and create something that these smaller municipalities then you know, can become a part of. And I think that's really why I like the county as a starting point.
Thank you. Don DeRemus, could we go back to you a little bit in terms of, you know, you talked a little bit about some of the concerns here about going down this route. You know, we've talked about funding, you know, off the side, which is, you know, paramount to this whole, you know, the whole reason why we're in this discussion here really today. I mean, your EMS was losing money, hemorrhaging money, you know, before this, and now COVID-19 has really exacerbated this situation. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect as we get into this discussion? Is consolidating the EMS and ambulance groups together, is, you know, does there need to be more in terms of the funding aspect than just that?
So systems have consolidated through the natural process because that's the only way they've been able to survive over the past decade. I don't know how much more consolidation would go on further if a county authority was created. If the county authority dictated that, there would be consolidation. But then the downside of that is if you have a county authority and it's passing money down to services via contract, you have weaker services that might actually be prolonged where they really shouldn't be in. They really should be gone. I don't know. I need to see more details to really hash this out. I look at the county authority as like a per capita tax-based collection model that can be distributed evenly amongst the municipalities to allow them to like purchase EMS service for their municipality. Because I mean, I service 15 municipalities and we get nothing financially from a municipality. And it's because we've always provided service for nothing. And if you go and ask a municipality for money, they try to find somebody else to replace you because they want to do it for nothing. I'm really interested in the county authority thing. We just need details to be able to sell it to members and to the community.
I'm muted. All right, so I'd like to open up to any further discussion here from anybody else has a question that hasn't been answered here yet, or you'd like to raise.
Hey, Nate, it's Tim from Pike County.
Go ahead.
Hey, you know, listening to everybody and getting all the different viewpoints, and it's all good information. I truly believe the county's a good starting point. I'm also, you know, a realist and believe that if we sit and don't do anything, it's going to get worse. Things aren't going to get better. But at least by starting at the county, you know, even if it's just a financial stream to provide, you know, reliable EMS service, it'll put more rigs on the road and protect our people here in Pike County. Without it being a county authority, the way we are set up here with municipalities, you know, that have very few taxables that could raise any type of money, and the volunteer system, our location to New York and New Jersey, the people just aren't volunteering. I mean, they're just not happening. I truly believe that without the county involvement to be the cog to collect the money for disbursement, you know, and give it to the authority to run a proper system, I just don't see how we here in Pike County will ever go forward with EMS unless something of that nature happens. And to be honest, I know this is all an EMS deal. We're not that far behind with fire too. We see that on a regular basis. Fire department scratching, going 2 or 3 deep to get an engine out of a house. So, you know, if we set it up right to begin with, I think it'll cross over to both of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
This
Go
might
ahead,
be for Sam or Sarah, but do you have any insight on if other states have implemented sort of a similar type model, or given counties the ability and the tool to do this? Any good sort of best practices from those states or lessons learned? Maybe they would as well.
Yeah, we've seen model in other states. Some call it like fire or EMS service districts. Some have them overlapping existing jurisdictions or are their own jurisdictions. Some even have the commissioners elected. We wanted to model it off of some of that. Here we call them authorities, not service districts, but it does work. I know Dylan is familiar with some of the models in other states around EMS where it does work.
Sure, and I'll just interject here, to that question. I would tell you that it would be that Pennsylvania is squarely in the minority as it relates to not having some type of authority or some type of emergency services district or fire protection district or EMS district. The majority of the states have that, I guess, that level, and that's how those services are ultimately funded. And that is ultimately how they fund what we've been talking about for years now, of cost of readiness. So are there some other states that are like us and really don't have this structure or have any type of structure? The answer to that question is, of course, yes. But Pennsylvania would be squarely in the minority as it relates to how our system is currently designed at the local and regional levels.
Jerry?
So Nate and others, over the last 2 years, I've conducted numerous strategic planning programs throughout Pennsylvania that had a lot of municipal officials and a lot of emergency services personnel. And it's very similar. I did a mini seminar in Pike County, and again, it's very similar, where you have municipal officials sitting at the table with emergency services providers. They're all looking for an answer, a way to fix this. We do have the haves and the have-nots, and we know the problem is there, and I believe the people that are willing to make it happen, those cool heads, will want to put together a good system. The people that I've talked to. But again, a lot of these people are detail related, and they won't sign on until the last little bit. But I have seen the suburban concerns, the rural concerns, and there will be challenges, I would say, trying to operationalize this. But I do believe with community meetings and facilitated meetings, everyone's throwing out problems. It's problems, 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 and there's no one talking about solutions. And I believe this could be the foundation to start with the solution, and it's an either opt in or opt out, and see where it goes. But I think that it is not impossible. I would say that.
Well, we're getting close to the wrap-up time. Anybody else have any final thoughts? Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to concerns about details and needing to see them, and thinking about this legislation. I think of it just as the first and honestly easier step of just allowing this to happen, allowing counties to start solving these problems. But the majority of the work is going to take a while in implementation and facilitation and figuring out what works for the county, what people can agree to within their communities. Some might just want a really, really lean authority that just provides some administrative back office services for their companies. and then others might want a more coordinated approach with more employees, providing greater services or coordination. Maybe there's a county out there that wants, you know, the authority to have its own fire companies. But, you know, I think there's a lot of flexibility here to design it the way that works for you. You know, I think that's really promising. But yeah, it's going to take work. And I think to that point, you know, we would be very strong advocates for legislation to accompany this kind of authorization, to provide that technical assistance, to support facilitation, and get these hard conversations moving, because they will be difficult. But, you know, with this crisis we've been facing for so many years, you know, it's really imperative that we figure out a way to transform and survive. So, you know, we would advocate that the state should support counties to figure it out, and figure out a way to work together. I guess the last thing is that, Nate, you know, we're very interested in keeping fire part of this conversation, and you know, I hope we'll have further opportunities to talk with more of the fireside stakeholders about what works for them or what doesn't work. But you know, in our neck of the woods, fire is definitely a major part of the conversation and concern for us, and you know, we're really hoping to keep that in here.
Yeah, for us in Delaware County, that's really where this conversation started. So that would be important. But I think that it is important to keep in mind those two layers from the ground up. One is around this legislation, building that from the ground up and understanding where everyone is and what will make it work for everyone. And then that second layer of ground up, working in local counties to do the implementation.
Anybody else? Don?
I'm really wondering where is PSABs and PSATs on this, and why weren't they included in this? Because any legislation like this, you know that their voice is going to be heard, either positive or negative.
Look, I'll take credit for not. I'll take responsibility here. That obviously, you know, you can't have everybody on a call, but they would, like I said at the beginning here of this conversation, they would need to be a part of this next go around on that front. So certainly, if we're going to have PSATs, then you have Boroughs Association as well as the League of Cities as well. Definitely would need to be part of this conversation. But you know, I wanted to gear this to, more towards the EMS end for this conversation. You know, there's a little flavor on fire on here. Certainly have some other local government commissions in here as well, but certainly, it's very important to have them on the next conversation.
Yeah, because my executive director is a township supervisor, and he has great concerns because I guess there was a municipal authority developed recently for tax collection, and somehow the municipalities lost voice on that because the school boards took more power in the way the authority was set up. So they thought that they lost the local control, but through that authority being developed. So he has a distaste for authorities right off the top. And I got to convince him for pro or con against this one going forward.
And as a township commissioner myself, I'm certainly tuned in from that angle too. But Sam, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I'll just say, Don, we did meet with each of the municipal associations a little earlier on before we had the formal language, but they were very interested in the model. They definitely recognized there's a crisis that we need to address, and they were all interested in figuring out a way for you know, municipalities to have a seat at the conversation, and that could happen a few different ways. We could bake it into the legislation to make sure that municipalities have representation on these, or counties could include that into their articles of incorporation, that they need to have a seat at the table and they get some board representation in these. You know, at the end of the day, if the municipalities aren't comfortable with what's happening, they're not going to participate, and these aren't going to get up and running. So you're absolutely right that they need to be part of the conversation.
I think they'll be happy to pass the tax baton.
I'll also say that, talking with municipal managers and council people and, folks in our county, that they were very excited about the prospect of this, and they felt that something like this could solve a lot of headaches for them and take it off their plate. And we're excited about having this kind of a resource to work towards.
Well, thank you everybody here for being a part of this conversation. Like we said, there's a number of conversations that need to be had as we continue to move this issue forward. There's a number of other balls in the air right now in terms of fire and EMS. Like we said, yesterday was a very good day in terms of Senate Bill 1122 getting to the governor, and again that will provide some needed assistance to both fire and EMS. And it's rare that you get an extra pot of funds available, but that was I was happy to be a part of that. House Bill 1838, that's the MSOS fine increase that came out of our Senate committee here not too long ago. It's our hope that we'll be able to move that forward. It's in our Senate Appropriations Committee right now, and it's our hope that we'll continue to move that piece forward. The mental health and wellness piece, House Bill 1459, it's our intent to move that forward in the near future with an amendment to address some concerns on that front. So we're going to continue to work from our end. The Senate is not in session next week, but the following week, and hopefully the fire and EMS grant itself, Senate Bill 910 is the Senate version. There's the House version, House Bill 1834. We know that needs to get done before the end of June. So that's certainly in the mix as well. So we're hoping that a number of these items get, land to get to the governor here by the end of the month. And, we'll be able to move forward then on the next round of legislation such as this here. Hopefully in the fall, we can start moving it in the fall. So that's my hope right now. But thank you very much for everybody being a part of this conversation. Look forward to continuing to talk with you on this and other issues. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks.